Hi, I'm Zhang. I live with my children in a small county town in China. In today's video, I want to talk about something very real. In our place, how much does it actually cost to get married? If you've never lived in a small city or county in China, it's probably hard to imagine what a wedding really means for an ordinary family. Where I live is a small, fairly typical city in northern coastal China. It's not the most developed place in the country, but it's not underdeveloped either. If I had to describe it, I would say it is relatively developed by Chinese standards. Here, traditional ideas still have a strong influence on marriage. Although in recent years, some things have slowly started to change. One of the most important topics around marriage here is something called bride price or betrothal gift. I'm not sure when this tradition started, but it has existed in China for a very long time. Simply put, it is a sum of money that the groom's family pays to the bride's family when getting married. How this money is eventually used depends on the bride's family. Some families keep it, while others give it to their daughter as savings for the new household. Different families, different choices. In our area, the bride price is usually between $13,000 and $27,000. Many people choose lucky numbers. For example, 188,000 RMB, about $26,111. In Chinese culture, numbers sometimes carry special meanings. For example, the number 8 sounds similar to the word for wealth or prosperity, so it is often associated with good fortune. The number 6 is also popular and usually represents smoothness or things going well. If you see 666 online in Chinese internet culture, it is often a way of saying well done or awesome. But honestly, the bride price in our area is not considered particularly high in China, because in some places, it can go up to around $70,000 or even more. Sometimes, if a family has 2 sons, people might even look at them with a kind of sympathy. Sounds a bit unbelievable, doesn't it? But the pressure of marriage is not only about the bride price. Here, a house is almost a must. So, in addition to the bride price, many families also need to prepare an apartment, or at least a down payment. In our area, a normal apartment costs around $70,000 to $130,000. Although prices have come down in recent years, for most ordinary families, this is still a huge burden, and this is only the biggest expense. There are also wedding costs themselves: banquets, decorations, photography, wedding cars, dresses. Every part of it costs money. And there is another traditional custom. The groom is usually expected to buy gold jewelry for the bride, such as rings, necklaces, bracelets. Altogether, This can cost another $1,000 to $1,300. So, in many cases, a wedding can mean years of savings, or even everything a family has saved. But even so, most people still choose to do it. Generally speaking, most of these costs are borne by the groom's family. Compared to that, the bride's family usually pays less. Of course, if the bride's family is well off, they may also provide a dowry. But unlike the groom's side, it is not something required. In many cases, it depends on the family situation. In recent years, however, things have started to change slowly. Sometimes, dowries are also seen as a reflection of family status. And some families try to prepare more, just for the sake of face. Before a marriage is officially decided, both families usually sit down to discuss terms. In a way, it almost feels like a negotiation. Everyone stays polite, but carefully talks about what each side can offer. I have seen families like this, sitting around drinking tea, slowly shifting the conversation toward money. At first, the atmosphere is calm, even polite. But once numbers are mentioned, the atmosphere begins to change. Someone suddenly goes quiet. Someone starts calculating. Someone looks at others without speaking. And that is often just the beginning. I once had a friend whose marriage discussions broke down because of this. They talked for a long time. Several times, it felt like everything was about to be settled. But each time they got close, something small would stop it again. In the end, they separated. No arguments, no big conflict, just slowly, going in different directions. How does that make you feel? On Chinese social media, discussions about bride price are always very popular. Some people see it as tradition, others see it as a heavy burden. But in real life, it often ends with the same sentence. This is just how things are done. As for me, when I got married, the bride price my husband's family gave was only symbolic, about $1,200. Even 15 years ago, that was a very small amount, but I didn't really care. For me, finding the right person mattered more than tradition. Of course, material life is important, but emotional compatibility mattered more to me. Luckily, both of our families were quite open-minded. Our marriage has never really been affected by these things. As the cost of marriage keeps rising, I've also started noticing some changes. Fewer people seem to be getting married. In the past, we would often hear about weddings in our area, but now those stories are becoming less frequent. At one point, I even realized I hadn't seen a newborn baby for a long time. Some young people simply choose not to get married. Others are not unwilling, but feel that the cost is simply too high. I know a young man who borrowed a lot of money just to get married. The wedding was very lively, but later he said, The real pressure began after the wedding. Of course, there are also people trying different ways. I know a young couple who didn't have a wedding at all. They simply had a small meal with their closest family members, no bride price, no complicated ceremony. At the time, many people thought it was unusual, but slowly, I've noticed more people like this. It seems some young people are starting to find their own way of approaching marriage. But this change is still very slow because marriage is never just about two people. It also involves parents, families, relatives, traditions, and expectations that are hard to put into words. Sometimes you realize what is really difficult to change is not money itself, but the feeling that this is how everyone does it. I don't think there is one right way. Some people like big, lively weddings. That is their choice. Others prefer something simple or even no ceremony at all. That also takes courage. That is today's video. Where you live. Are there any must-have conditions for marriage? A house, money, or something else if you'd like? Feel free to share in the comments.